Iran's supreme leader is dead. His son, appointed to replace him just weeks ago, is lying in a coma in a Tehran hospital, unaware he even holds the title. And right now, with no one legally authorized to make the final call, a nuclear-armed government is tearing itself apart in real time. If you want to understand how close the world is to something it cannot walk back from, stay with me, because what is happening inside Iran today is not a political crisis. It is a command collapse. And the people who are supposed to stop it from spiraling are the very ones accelerating it. Here is what you need to know to understand this. For more than 3 decades, the Islamic Republic ran on one principle: everything flows from the supreme leader. Ali Khamenei held that office for 35 years. Whatever anyone thought of him, his presence at the top of the system meant there was always a final decision maker, always someone who could impose a resolution when the factions below started pulling in different directions. On February 28th, a joint U.S.-Israeli strike eliminated Khamenei, IRGC Commander Baqer, Armed Forces Chief Mousavi, Defense Minister Nasserzadeh, and 48 senior officials in a single operation. The command architecture of the Islamic Republic, meticulously constructed over 45 years to concentrate final authority in one ideological hierarchy, was decapitated in one night. If you are watching this for the first time and that sentence just landed, drop a comment below, because what happened next is what nobody predicted. Mojtaba Khamenei, Ali's son, was rushed into the role of third supreme leader on March 9th. The plan was clear: fill the vacuum fast, restore the gravitational center before the factions could exploit it. But Mojtaba went into a coma shortly after the appointment, and just like that, the control room of a government that possesses nuclear capabilities was left empty. Every faction that had been held in check by the weight of the office above them was now free to move, and they did. 4 men stepped into that vacuum. They all came from the same IRGC barracks in the 1980s. They fought in the same war, and they have spent the 4 decades since accumulating grievances against each other that run far deeper than ideology. Their names are Vahidi, Galibaf, Zolgadar, and Rezai. Understanding what each of them wants, and what each of them is willing to do, is the only way to understand why Iran is currently issuing 3 completely contradictory sets of orders from the same government on the same day. Ahmad Vahidi commands the IRGC. His personal history includes operational command responsibility for the 1994 Buenos Aires Jewish Community Center bombing that killed 85 people. An Interpol red notice from Argentina has followed him for 30 years. His position on the current crisis is not complicated. The war continues, the Strait stays closed, and any negotiation with the United States is a betrayal of the revolution. But here is what makes Vahidi genuinely dangerous in this moment. This is not just ideology. The IRGC's budget, its political weight, its reason for existing inside the Iranian system, all of it depends on the presence of an active external enemy. In peacetime, its enormous budget becomes a political question. Its proxy networks become a liability. Its internal security apparatus becomes an obstacle. For Vahidi, a negotiated settlement is not a policy option he disagrees with. It is an institutional extinction event. Mohammad Baqer Galibaf, the parliament speaker who is leading the Islamabad negotiation delegation, has arrived at a different conclusion. Not because he is a reformist, and not because he is sympathetic to the West, but because he has looked at the numbers and understood something Vahidi appears to have decided to ignore. Iran has absorbed an estimated $270 billion in war damage. Its currency is at a historic low. Its oil storage tanks are full because no one is buying. And according to reporting by Rudaw, Iran has somewhere between 10 and 15 days before it must begin shutting down oil wells entirely. Not temporarily idling them, but permanently damaging underground reservoir pressure in ways that reduce future production capacity for years. Galibaf is not trying to end the revolution. He is trying to prevent the revolution from ending itself before anyone on the outside has to fire another shot. But here is where it gets more dangerous than most people realize. The coma at the top of the system is not just a leadership gap, it is a weapon. Every decision Galibaf makes, every concession his delegation advances in Islamabad, every framework Karachi's foreign ministry tries to signal to international partners, all of it can be challenged by Vahidi on the grounds that no legitimate supreme leader approval exists. The man who is supposed to authorize the decisions is unconscious and cannot communicate. Vahidi knows this. And he has positioned a hardline MP, Mahmoud Nabian, inside the negotiation delegation specifically to sabotage it from within. The coma is functioning as a permanent retroactive veto. Any deal Galibaf reaches can be declared unauthorized the moment Vahidi chooses to pull that trigger. Foreign Minister Arakchi announced on April 17th that the Strait of Hormuz was open to all commercial vessels. He was attempting to signal flexibility ahead of the next round of nuclear talks. On the same day, the IRGC opened fire on tankers. And then Iranian state television, on the same day that announcement was made, publicly called the foreign minister stupid on the air. The same government, the same 24 hours, two completely opposite orders. That is not a government experiencing internal tension. That is a government that has ceased to function as a single coherent entity. While all of this unfolds inside Tehran, the external environment is moving in ways no faction inside the regime anticipated. China, which purchased 90% of Iran's oil exports before the blockade, called Saudi Arabia, not Iran, to deliver its position on the strait. Xi Jinping explicitly told Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman that Hormuz must remain open, characterizing it as an international waterway in the common interest of the region. Read that choice of interlocutor carefully. China did not call its 25-year strategic partner. It called the Gulf state sitting on the opposite side of every Iranian security calculation. Beijing's energy security, its yuan trade strategy, its Gulf commercial relationships, all of them require a functioning Hormuz, regardless of what Tehran's factions decide. And China is now publicly aligning with Gulf states over Iran to make that clear. Russia's position is simultaneously more complex and more revealing. Foreign Minister Lavrov appeared at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, condemned the U.S. blockade as unlawful, defended Iran's right to enrich uranium, and then in the very same statement said that Russia stands ready to supply energy resources to China and other countries affected by the crisis. There it is. Russia is performing solidarity with Iran while openly advertising its readiness to replace Iran in the markets Iran is losing. Every barrel of Iranian oil sitting in a full storage tank with nowhere to go is a barrel Russia can sell to China. Russia's support for Iran is the support of a competitor who needs the partnership narrative to hold while profiting quietly from the partner's collapse. The result is a geopolitical isolation that even Iran's most determined enemies could not have engineered directly. The United States is the declared adversary. Israel is the declared adversary. Gulf states have been structurally hostile for decades, and now China is publicly pressuring Iran to stand down. Russia is preparing to fill the gap Iran is losing. Hezbollah's senior leadership has been eliminated. Hamas has been crushed in Gaza. The Houthis are in direct naval combat with American forces. The 40-year architecture of Iranian regional influence, the concrete expression of the revolution's reach beyond its own borders, is collapsing simultaneously from every direction. President Pezeshkian, the reformist elected on a platform of economic relief and diplomatic engagement, dropped a public statement that landed inside the regime like a detonation. If the conflict continues, Iran faces a massive reconstruction crisis. Infrastructure in ruins, no funding, no market stability. The people, he said, must be told the truth. For the hardliners, it was a declaration of surrender. For 85 million Iranians, it was the first honest sentence spoken from inside the regime in years. And the people have not been passive. Iran's state television broadcast a segment claiming that 87% of Iranians support continuing the war, a figure delivered with total conviction, no polling organization named, no methodology described. The independent Gaman Research Institute, in a verified survey of over 30,000 participants, found the precise opposite. 63% of Iranians say the war is between the regime and Israel and has nothing to do with them. 44% hold the regime directly responsible for the country's condition. 58% rate the regime's performance as negative. The gap between 87% war support and 63% regime non-identification is not a polling discrepancy. It is the measurement of a regime that has completely lost contact with the population it claims to represent. And Gaman's trend data shows that the direction of public opinion inside Iran is not stable. It is accelerating, moving toward a level of delegitimization that can no longer be managed by propaganda alone. What you are watching unfold today is not simply a government in crisis. It is four men who have known each other since 1988, who know each other's failures and ambitions, and files from 4 decades inside the same institutions, now playing the final game of a 40-year competition, with the stakes set at the survival of a regime, the welfare of 85 million people, and the stability of the most strategically critical waterway on Earth. One analyst described it with precision that has not left me since I read it. This is a nuclear-armed high school reunion, and the personal scores being settled in that reunion are determining whether Iran negotiates its way out of this crisis or escalates into something the region cannot contain. Galibaf is asking whether he can consolidate enough institutional authority to survive long enough for a second round of talks to produce a framework. Vahidi is asking whether the next tanker his forces fire on will be the one that ends the Islamabad process entirely and collapses the negotiating faction's political position inside the regime. Pezeshkian is asking whether telling the Iranian people the truth will buy the regime enough legitimacy to survive, or whether the truth itself will simply accelerate the collapse he is trying to prevent. And 85 million Iranians are asking the question that no faction inside the government has a comfortable answer to. How much longer? The Strait of Hormuz opened briefly. 5 cruise ships and a handful of cargo vessels transited, and then closed again. Open, closed, open, closed. Every country watching that erratic cycle is drawing the same conclusion. Iran has lost the ability to execute a coherent strategy. It cannot fight its way out of the blockade. It cannot negotiate its way out. It cannot send a signal of de-escalation without the IRGC immediately contradicting it with live fire. And it cannot sustain closure without the economic consequences accelerating past a point it cannot survive. Hormuz, the strategic weapon that kept the world nervous for 40 years, has become Iran's cage. The oil wells have 10 to 15 days. Trump's deadline has arrived. The man constitutionally required to make the final decision cannot open his eyes. And the man with his finger closest to the trigger, a figure with an Interpol notice, a history stretching from Lebanon to Buenos Aires, and a budget that depends on the continuation of the very conflict the world is trying to end, has no interest in a deal. That is what has stunned Washington, not the crisis itself, but the man at the center of it. We update this analysis every day as events develop. If this breakdown helped you understand what is actually happening inside Iran right now, not the surface-level headlines, but the real factional war beneath them, share it with someone who needs to see it. And drop your question in the comments. Do you think Galibaf can reach a deal before Vahidi destroys the process from the inside? Tell me what you think. If you want this level of daily analysis on the crises that actually matter, subscribe. It takes 5 seconds, and it means you never miss an update when things move fast. And right now, they are moving very fast.